With the end of 2022, so too comes Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'll say this, it was an interesting period of time for Marvel Studios. On the one hand, we saw them lay the groundwork for their next big storyline, now known as the Multiverse Saga. On the other hand, their experimentation in the phase left mixed results. While they did make shows on Disney Plus with the same budget as their films and explore genres and formats that the studio hadn't previously explored, there were many who felt that they oversaturated Phase 4 and bit off more than they could chew. This is to be expected when you experiment. Not everything is going to go right, and you will encounter bumps along the way. However, I will say that they kept things interesting. Just probably not the way they intended. At the beginning of last year, I made a video discussing my initial thoughts on the Phase 4 projects we got in 2021, so I thought it'd only be fair to do the same for the rest of Phase 4. Keep in mind that these are all my initial thoughts and not my retrospective on Phase 4. I'll save all of that for when I do the Multiverse Saga retrospective. Also, this is my own personal opinion, so feel free to disagree with me and tell me how much I suck. And don't worry, this is all spoiler free too. Without further ado, let's get started. Marvel decided to kick off 2022 the same way they started 2021, a Disney Plus show. And that show is Moon Knight. And I'll be honest, I was kind of expecting more. Don't get me wrong, I like it, but I do think it could have been better. Let me explain. I love what Oscar Isaac did with the character and thought he handled the material very well. I also love Ethan Hawke as the villain and thought he brought a lot of dimension to the character. I really enjoyed the production design and character depth we got. However, there were some elements that people refer to as the Marvel formula that got in the way. For example, the finale was very rushed, and the way they handled the climax was disappointing. I guess they were trying to subvert expectations, but it didn't work. Also, there were a lot of things with some characters that felt unnecessary and done for the sake of inclusion. The CG was hit and miss at times. The effects for the Egyptian gods looked cool, but the Moon Knight suit felt more like a video game character. Although I will say I like the design with the bandages. I think what fell flat for me was the writing. While there were a lot of good ideas presented, they failed to deliver on most of them. A common issue I have with scripts is when there are multiple writers because you have a bunch of different people vying for their voice to be heard and the core of the story is lost. The finale had around 5 writers and it showed. I will say that I applaud Isaac's work and commend him on his contract negotiation with Marvel, as this singular season was all he signed up for. And I do want to see the character return in the future and work with other heroes. But for now, the show is lukewarm at best. Next up is the first Marvel film in 2022, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I know people have their problems with this movie, but for me, this was the peak of Phase 4. Don't get me wrong, I love No Way Home and I love Loki, but this truly felt like the next step for the MCU. As a Doctor Strange and Sam Raimi fan, this was a lot of fun to watch in theaters and at home. Plus, since we had no Avengers film in this phase, I believe this was the culmination of Phase 4. Think about it. Most of the projects in this phase were leading up to the film. WandaVision, Loki, No Way Home, and even Shang-Chi if you count Wong's appearance. They all paved the way for Multiverse of Madness. And even though we don't explore many universes in the movie, I feel they did enough to keep the focus on where it needed to be, on Strange. I know some felt there was too much going on and that it didn't feel like a Strange movie, but I have to vehemently disagree. This is still his journey. Overall, this film definitely delivered. Back over to Disney Plus for the second show of the year, Miss Marvel. This series pleasantly surprised me, especially because I didn't think it was going to be that good. And don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against the character, but the marketing felt like this show wasn't going to be for me. However, I ended up having a really good time. Iman Vellani absolutely shines as Kamala and is a huge standout among the characters introduced in Phase 4. The action, story, and characters all made for a fun ride and gave some nice insight into Pakistani culture and history. I'll admit I know very little about it, but I was intrigued by what they showed me. The only issue I have is with the villains. They aren't as engaging as other villains we've encountered so far, and their motivations are bare at best. However, they didn't take away from the hero and her journey. And this does have me more excited for the Marvels than I ever have. If you haven't watched the series, check it out. You won't regret it. Time for the next movie of Phase 4 with Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't know if there's much I can say that hasn't already been said, but I guess I should start with the positives. Oddly enough, a lot of the strong stuff in the movie for me is Jane Foster. I actually thought they utilized her well. Better than before, that's for sure. I liked how they expanded her relationship with Thor, and her journey made it the best that she has ever been in the MCU. Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher was a great villain too. The visuals were also spectacular. Everything else, though, yeah, it's annoying. They basically took the humor in Ragnarok and dialed it up to 11, making it grating for more than half the film. On top of that, a chunk of characters are wasted here. Valkyrie, Sif, and even the Guardians feel superfluous. It definitely feels like there's a lot missing here, which isn't surprising given the runtime and how much I heard was cut from the film. If No Way Home can get an extended cut, then I would be very interested in seeing one for this film. As an extra note, the inclusion of more gods from other pantheons was nothing more than a backdrop, and was only done to introduce another hero god from the comics. I guess the only other positive thing I can say is that I still prefer this to Dark World, but not by much. Make of that what you will. Once again on Disney Plus for show number 3, She-Hulk. Oh boy. Speaking of Dark World, I think I may have finally found the thing to dethrone it as the worst of the MCU. There is very little that I like about this series, and the things I do have almost nothing to do with the show's original characters, but the guest heroes. And even then, they don't really do that much to elevate the show. The writing is some of the worst in any superhero story. The comedy is cringier than Love and Thunder. The CG, honestly, isn't that bad, all things considered, but that's not saying much. I think what really got on my nerves was the fourth wall humor. Yes, I know, she did it in the comics long before Deadpool. But here's the thing. When Deadpool does it in the movies, there's a sense of charm, and the jokes themselves made sense within the context of the world and story. Here, every time she does it, it's jarring, and simply done for the sake of doing it. Like the writers said, oh, we have to do this thing because that's what shows like this do. That's what this whole show feels like. A TV trope checklist. Stuffing every episode with all the things other shows do without any understanding as to why it worked there. The only real positive thing I can say is that I like the character and the actress, and I do want to see her return, preferably with better writing. Long story short, I am not revisiting this series anytime soon, at least not until I do the retrospective. Before moving on, I want to touch on another Disney Plus project that technically is a part of Phase 4, though it's not listed with the other shows. I Am Groot. The series of shorts centered around everyone's favorite little tree. My verdict on these shorts? They're fine. Unnecessary, but fine. They clearly serve as a little distraction between the other Phase 4 stuff, but they do work well for what they are. Not much else to say. Now on to something that I am really excited to talk about. The Marvel Studios special presentation, Werewolf by Night. This kicks ass. Everything from the acting, writing, design, aesthetics, its tributes to classic monster movies while exploring a side of the MCU we haven't seen before. This rules. It's one of the most refreshing experiences I've had with Marvel in a long time. A slightly short but sweet experience that is self contained and doesn't focus on the connections to other MCU projects. I love Werewolf by Night. It's an example of Marvel's experimentation going right. If you haven't already watched it, I implore you to. And the final Marvel film from 2022 is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now, I haven't watched the movie since I saw it in theaters, so my thoughts might change upon a rewatch. But from what I experienced, I enjoyed it. Not as much as the first film, but I think given what the team behind it had to work with given the real life tragedy that occurred, I think they handled it very well. They still kept the focus on where it needed to be while also expanding the world of Wakanda and its connections. Namor is also a great villain, and the world of Talokan is incredible. Granted, it will no doubt draw comparisons to Avatar The Way of Water, but it's still cool. And I will say that I am excited to see how these characters continue in the MCU. Overall, it's a solid end to Marvel's movie run in 2022. Ending off the MCU's 2022 run and Phase 4 is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. A fun and enjoyable detour that reminds us why we love these characters. Getting to see Mantis and Drax take center stage was a delight. Introducing Cosmo was great, and seeing Kevin Bacon make fun of himself was absolutely hilarious. This may feel unnecessary, like I Am Groot, but I think this is more worthy of our time. If nothing else, it's a good pastime around the holidays. A wonderful note to end Phase 4. That brings us to the end of this video. Phase 4 had some bumps along the way, but hopefully Marvel has found their footing in their new saga. With exciting projects coming this year like Quantum Mania, Secret Invasion, Guardians 3, Ironheart, The Marvels, and several others, Marvel shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video and wanted to see more, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and share with friends. I got a couple more videos coming before I begin my work on the Marvel television shows, so be on the lookout. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.